Tonight, the Senate cracks down on credit card companies, no more surprise rate hikes and excessive fees, but it won't take effect for 9 months.
And during that time, we could face the continuing reign of terror.
I'm Katie Couric. Also tonight, children of the recession.
What the recession means to me is not being able to afford the things that I really need.
And that is taking a psychological toll.
You can see it in their eyes. They're thinking about something else.
And meet Ida. Scientists say she is the long-sought missing link that ties humans to the rest of the animal kingdom.
This is the CBS Evening News with Katie Couric.
And good evening, everyone. This is a special broadcast tonight with fewer commercials and more news. And we begin with news that will affect everyone who has a credit card. And there are 800 million of them out there. In response to consumer complaints, the Senate voted overwhelmingly today to crack down on credit card companies. They'd have to allow customers to pay their bills online or by phone for free, give more than a month's notice of any interest rate hike, and they won't be able to increase the rate on an existing balance unless the cardholder was more than 60 days behind on payments. Chip Reid is at the White House tonight. And Chip, this bill was a long time coming, wasn't it?
Well, you've got that right, Katie. Some on Capitol Hill have been trying to crack down on credit card companies for 20 years. Now, with members of Congress getting an earful from enraged voters, the Credit Card Bill of Rights is on the verge of becoming law.
Interest rates of 25, 30, 35, 50% are outrageous.
Penalties have been increased. Fees have been added, in many cases without any justification at all.
In the end, the vote wasn't even close.
The ayes are 90, the nays are 5.
Known as the Credit Cardholders Bill of Rights, it would require 45 days' notice to increase rates, require promotional rates to last at least 6 months, and ban rate hikes during the first year on new cards.
For consumers across the country who are drowning in credit card debt, a lifeboat has just arrived.
With the average college graduate holding $4,000 in credit card debt, the bill would deny cards to those under 21 unless they can prove their ability to pay or get a parent to co-sign. And as President Obama has demanded,
no more fine print, no more confusing terms and conditions.
The bill requires companies to explain everything in plain English, including how much interest cardholders will owe if they only pay the minimum balance. But credit card companies say the bill goes too far and will force them to cut back on credit at a time when many Americans desperately need it. In a statement, the American Bankers Association warns that the Senate bill will have a dramatic impact on the ability of consumers, students, and small businesses to obtain and use credit cards. But those protests are falling on deaf ears here at the White House and on Capitol Hill. The House is expected to pass the bill as soon as tomorrow, and the president plans to sign it by this weekend. Katie?
Chip Reid at the White House tonight. Chip, thank you. But even after he signs it, the law won't fully take effect for 9 months. And Anthony Mason tells us consumer groups are concerned the credit card companies will use that loophole to push through more interest rate hikes and fees.
Mr. Bradley, is it 1 month past due?
At this credit counseling center in Dallas,
Or overextended?
calls for help are up 40% over a year ago.
What's an average you're doing monthly on that?
Many come from borrowers buried in credit card debt.
It's amazing how much of the debt is actually fees and interest as opposed to principal.
Comedians may joke about the banks.
They simply change their rules and interest rates based on what the credit rule monkey spins on his rule randomizing wheel.
But they're not laughing on Capitol Hill anymore.
Are the credit card companies going to go willingly into this?
They will go kicking and screaming into the night on this one.
Adam Levin of Credit.com warns that lenders will use the 9 months before the law is enacted to raise interest rates and hike fees.
During that time, we could face the continuing reign of terror.
Interest and late fees are lenders' primary sources of profits, so to make up for lost revenue, credit card companies may now have to go after the 45% of borrowers who pay their bills on time by reviving annual fees, charging interest immediately on purchases instead of offering grace periods, and eliminating rewards programs. At the same time, lenders are making it tougher to borrow. Nearly 60% of banks say they've tightened credit card lending standards this year. That means less money for borrowers feeling squeezed by the recession.
And we still face the fact that Americans are debt-ridden and that Americans have to focus on developing a serious plan personally to reduce their debt, because this is not going to solve that problem.
When it comes to credit cards, Americans still owe $945 billion in revolving debt. But that's down from $980 billion just 6 months ago. Tighter lending standards may be one reason. Another, Americans finally may be starting to pay down their credit card bills. Anthony Mason, CBS News, New York.
From cards to cars now. We told you about it last night. President Obama made it official today. He outlined new and tougher mileage and emission standards for cars and light trucks. The automakers are on board. Top executives joined the president for the White House announcement. By 2016, new vehicles will be required to average 35.5 miles a gallon and reduce emissions by 30%. Projected savings, nearly 2 billion barrels of oil.
At a time of historic crisis in our auto industry, when domestic auto manufacturers are making painful choices and restructuring their businesses to be viable in the future, this rule provides the clear certainty that will allow these companies to plan for a future in which they are building the cars of the 21st century.
The new national standards will replace a patchwork of regulations enacted by individual states. Also in Washington, Congress heard a shocking report today about what some teachers are doing to their students. Investigators said they'd uncovered hundreds of cases in which attempts to restrain a student allegedly crossed the line to abuse. Nancy Cordes is on Capitol Hill, and Nancy, officials haven't done a good job keeping track of this.
That's right, Katie. In fact, investigators think that the record keeping over the past 2 decades has been so poor that the real number of cases is actually in the thousands.
Most of the victims were children with special needs or disabilities whose improper restraint led to death or alleged abuse.
I guess she was going to show him who was boss.
Tony Price lost her foster child, Cedric. He told his 8th grade teacher he couldn't breathe, but she continued to sit on him as punishment for trying to leave the classroom.
Autopsy report said that they had never seen anything like that except in a car crash because she crushed his chest.
Her state of Texas alone logged nearly 19,000 cases of public school children being physically restrained last year.
It's appropriate to use restraints and seclusion with children only when the safety of the child is in danger or those around him.
And yet federal investigators testified today that some of the abuse cases they uncovered involved preschoolers as young as 3. They also found parents were often not notified that their children were repeatedly placed in time-out rooms, even closets, for hours on end.
If you put a child into seclusion 75 times, you might want to think that it's not working.
31 states have laws regarding restraint techniques in schools, but they are so loosely enforced, Cedric's teacher was still teaching until GAO investigators notified her new school district in Virginia on Friday. A California mother testified today that the teacher who repeatedly bruised and struck her daughter, Paige, when she was just 7, is also still working.
She grabbed Paige's wrists in her left hand, forced them up between Paige's shoulder blades, and drove her head first into the ground.
Stories like that left members of Congress wondering whether they should set federal standards for how and when children should be restrained in schools. Katie?
Really disturbing story. Nancy, thank you so much. Turning now to the fight against the Taliban and al-Qaeda, CIA Director Leon Panetta said today the U.S. plans to continue using Predator drones along the border of Afghanistan and Pakistan. He said they're the only way to go after the al-Qaeda leadership because the unmanned planes are precise and limit collateral damage. In the ground war, Pakistan's military continues attacking Taliban forces in the Swat Valley with civilians caught in the middle. Many have fled the violence for makeshift camps. Now, Secretary of State Hillary Clinton is promising U.S. help for those refugees. Here's David Martin.
According to the Pentagon, it is the largest operation ever by the Pakistani military, a counteroffensive against Taliban and al-Qaeda fighters in the frontier territories. It's exactly what the U.S. has been calling for, but it has spawned a refugee crisis with as many as 2 million villagers fleeing their homes. Pakistan is asking for help, and the U.S. is eager to oblige.
So today I am announcing that the people of the United States are responding to a request for assistance from the government of Pakistan with more than $100 million in humanitarian support. And we are prepared to do more as the situation demands.
C-17 transport planes loaded with food, tents, and water trucks are scheduled to start arriving in Pakistan tomorrow, in what the U.S. hopes will put at least a dent in anti-American sentiment and encourage the Pakistani government to keep up its offensive in the frontier area.
That's why it's important that we step up now and help on the humanitarian front.
It's a repeat of the aid effort the Bush administration mounted 4 years ago in Pakistan in the wake of a devastating earthquake. Since then, Pakistan has undergone a political earthquake in which terrorist attacks have more than quadrupled and large swaths of its frontier area have fallen under Taliban control. The Pentagon wants to send military advisors to help Pakistan's army plan and execute operations against the Taliban. But so far, the offer has been rejected. David Martin, CBS News, the Pentagon.
Also at the Pentagon today, a spokesman said the administration still intends to shut down the prison at Guantanamo Bay in January, but Senate Democratic leaders now say they will not put up the money to do that until the president decides where to put those 240 detainees. There is strong opposition in Congress to any plan that would bring prisoners here to the United States. Up in space, the Hubble telescope is back on its own, cut loose today from the shuttle Atlantis. NASA says the 19-year-old telescope is better than new after being completely overhauled. Its life could be extended by up to a decade. This was the final repair mission for Hubble. The Atlantis astronauts, the last humans who will ever see it up close. They're due home on Friday. Still ahead right here on the CBS Evening News, a discovery that could help explain where we came from. Is it the missing link? But up next, helping children deal with the psychological impact of this recession. America's teachers are on the front lines.
This portion of the CBS Evening News is sponsored by the Alzheimer's Association.
These economic hard times are affecting people in this country in so many ways, ways that might not occur to you. For one thing, the recession appears to have more parents considering placing their babies up for adoption. An adoption agency in Illinois told USA Today the number of mothers making inquiries in the first quarter of this year is up 30% from just a year ago. And a nationwide agency says the number across the country is up as much as 12%. And then there is the psychological impact of living through a major economic downturn, harder on children than you may realize. More than half the parents we surveyed for a CBS News poll said they've discussed the country's economic problems with their kids, and half have talked to their children about the financial situation of their own family. It can put a lot of stress on a young person, and Seth Doan tells us teachers are seeing the effects of it. In partnership with USA Today, CBS reports Children of the Recession.
The students at Montclair High School in Southern California are learning the 3 R's, but many of them are living the lessons from a 4th R, recession.
My name is Brenda, and what the recession means to me is stop wanting what I want and start wanting what I need.
Hi, my name is Dulce, and what the recession means to me is wearing $10 shoes.
More than 80% of the nearly 34 million teenagers nationwide say they're concerned about the economy.
Hi, I'm Kristen Beltran, and what the recession means to me is not being able to afford the things that I really need.
Kristen's dad, a welder, has a quarter of the work he had this time last year, and their mortgage is 3 months behind. 15-year-old Kristen wishes her parents would let her get a job.
Are we going to have enough money for groceries? Are my parents going to be able to pay the bills?
These are things you worry about now.
Sometimes, yeah.
And you didn't before?
No. It's like, that's adult stuff.
you're going to see it in their eyes. They're thinking about something else, and it has nothing to do with Algebra 2.
Guide words. So
Their teachers say it has everything to do with what's happening at home.
You want me to learn about this when I can't even go out and buy, something to eat?
It sounds like there are all of these new problems cropping up among the student population. How does it manifest itself?
In tears?
Yeah.
Really, I don't know what else to say other than that I have more kids crying in my office. I have more parents meeting with me, sometimes without their kids.
They don't want to tell the kids how bad things are?
I don't think they want to cause their child more discomfort by having that conversation with them present. So they'll come and they'll tell me, I don't know if you know, but we're moving out of this apartment right now. We were evicted.
Hi, my name is Faith Herrera, and what the recession means to me is losing my dream house.
Parents often try to shield their kids, so when things fall apart, like a foreclosure, it comes as a shock. It sure did to Faith Herrera.
It seemed that our family was going through a great life, and then my dad lost his job.
Some psychologists worry that for teens who are still developing their very identity, the financial and social strains of the recession could lead to a lifelong sense of insecurity.
It makes me disappointed in myself that I cannot help anybody.
Why disappointed in yourself?
Because it seems that I keep trying and nothing seems adequate enough.
Meaning schools have to provide a lot more than an education.
We're a bank. We're counseling services. We're a grocery store. Backpacks, alarm clocks, school supplies, stacks of paper. We give those things out, and it's pretty regular and definitely an increase from last year.
Hey, I'm Felicia, and what the recession means to me is my prom dress.
Because a teacher pitched in with the money so Felicia could buy that dress. While she has a job and loving sisters, there's not much else. Two of your sisters sleep here.
Here, yeah, and I get the lovely space.
You sleep on the floor?
Yeah, I sleep on the floor.
Felicia Jefferson draws strength from her sisters.
Hey, I'm Austin, and what the recession means to me is waiting for that next paycheck to buy new guitar strings.
Austin Seal at Los Osos, a nearby school, gets his strength from his parents.
This can tear apart families, or it can bring families together, and luckily for me, it's brought my family closer together.
Austin says his mom lost her job in the mortgage industry, and his dad's hours were cut, but his parents were upfront about their financial troubles.
My parents keep it more open than I think some families do.
And experts say that's a good idea because kids know what's going on anyway.
And they always are wanting to talk about it in class. They want to dialogue a lot more about these things, whereas before I couldn't get them to talk about, things that are going on with their families.
They talk about their dreams, too.
Attend college.
College.
I would love to go to college, yeah.
All part of a generation determined to rise above this recession. Seth Doan, CBS News, Ontario, California.
For more about helping kids deal with the stress of the economic hard times, you can go to cbsnews.com and click on Children of the Recession. Tomorrow morning on The Early Show, how to talk to your kids about the economy. And then here on the CBS Evening News, a rise in child abuse, another troubling side effect of this recession. Meanwhile, coming up next, electronic medical records. They can save lives, but the cost is still a serious problem.
This portion of the CBS Evening News is sponsored by the Alzheimer's Association.
The latest now on the worldwide flu outbreak. Developing a vaccine to fight the H1N1 virus is proving much tougher than expected. The World Health Organization said today production won't begin until mid-July at the earliest. Confirmed cases now total nearly 10,000 in 40 countries, and 80 deaths have been confirmed, including 72 in Mexico and 6 here in the U.S. In other health news, medical mistakes. According to one estimate, they kill more than 100,000 Americans every year and create $51 billion in healthcare costs. Experts say one way to reduce mistakes is to make all medical records available by computer. But that has a high cost, too, and not all doctors are ready to pay it. More on that story from Wyatt Andrews.
The heart attack patient arriving by medevac is unconscious, and the paper medical records that came with him are costing time. Emergency physician Doug Smith has to search for the patient's most recent EKG.
They had 6 EKGs.
And that was time.
Time and confusion, and that's where errors can occur.
Dr. Smith is a big believer in electronic health records. His hospital, part of Virginia's Innova chain, has a fully electronic ER network. Emergency crews wear laptops like backpacks. Every patient is barcoded. The heart attack patient has seen his last paper record. Everything about this patient will be recorded electronically. All of his tests, all of his medications, all of the EKGs tracking the progress of his heart. Does this help reduce error?
I believe it does. When you're in a paper environment, it's a much easier process to overlook something, to overlook the medication allergy, to overlook a lab result that you didn't see.
President Obama put $20 billion in the stimulus for computerized records, saying they'd save money and lives and get done in 5 years.
Within 5 years, all of America's medical records are computerized.
There is plenty of evidence electronic records save lives.
I think they saved my life.
Phyllis Hendrickson got an urgent call one night to go to the emergency room. A computer had flagged her lab test for high potassium. Dr. Christine Habib, who was at home and on call, accessed the records.
Kidney disease, diabetes.
And knew instantly that Phyllis, as a kidney patient, could die from potassium levels that high.
If we would have just been relying on a paper chart, I would not have had that information at my fingertips.
But the savings from electronic records are much harder to prove. In Dr. Habib's office, the system cost $500,000.
You're right, you do have two things going on.
For Dr. Sarita Gopal, whose practice has just 3 doctors, the price would exceed $100,000. Just too expensive?
I'm not doing it, unless I get a benefit from it, right? Is it going to make me move any faster? No. Is it going to make my patient care any better? I don't see that.
High costs are the biggest obstacle facing the electronic future. To doctors at Innova, which spent $200 million over 10 years, it's clear the president will need a lot more than $20 billion and a lot longer than 5 years. Wyatt Andrews, CBS News, Fairfax, Virginia.
Now an update on our story last week about a scandal in Britain's parliament. Lawmakers were caught billing taxpayers for outrageous personal expenses, everything from porn movies to cleaning a moat. The Speaker of the House of Commons, Michael Martin, tried but failed to keep those expenses secret. Well, today he handed in his resignation, the first Speaker to be forced out in more than 300 years. Coming up next, meet Ida, 47 million years old, and possibly the link between animals and humans. Finally tonight, it's a discovery that has some scientists very excited, and they're determined to get you excited too. As Kelly Wallace reports, the fuss is over a fossil that may just be a crucial link in the evolution of monkeys and humans.
Go ahead. 3, 2, 1. When you're 47 million years old, you really can draw a crowd. Researchers call her Ida and say she may be one of our earliest known ancestors.
We are not dealing with our grandmother, but perhaps with our grand-aunt.
She's almost completely preserved with a trace of fur and fossilized remains of her last meal. About the size of a cat, she has characteristics found in later primates and in humans. Nails on her hands and feet instead of claws, short limbs and a shortened face. Her real significance lies in settling a debate over which branch of ancestors led to humans. But if that sounds a little academic,
I need everyone to back up.
Her handlers pulled out all the stops with a media blitz unheard of in scientific circles.
Their research will stun the world.
Today, they released this trailer for a documentary advertised like a summer blockbuster. There's a book, a website, iPod applications. They even kept the discovery secret for 2 years. This is not the way science used to be.
How much are you following what rock stars and athletes do?
Yes, we're learning from them. So next time maybe we'll do the whole thing on YouTube.
It may seem unseemly, but researchers say they're thinking of the next generation.
If you want your kids to be scientists, you need to tell the story on many different platforms. You can't only publish a scientific paper. Nobody reads a scientific paper.
Rock stars in music get plenty of attention. It's all right if science gets a little.
So while we don't know exactly what Ida means to human origins, she's proof we're endlessly fascinated with where we came from. Kelly Wallace, CBS News, New York.
And that is the CBS Evening News for tonight. I'm Katie Couric. Thank you for watching. I'll see you tomorrow. Good night.